we had some questions about how was your relationship with the Nooksack families that lived nearby?
Well,
Do you remember?
no, only that it seemed like they were pretty good friends.
Yeah.
All pretty good friends. And I know Nick Almond had a farm up there just beyond where the schoolhouse was then, and had a farm up there. And he'd buy a cow or two from my dad. At times he'd come down and pick out one he wanted, and my dad would sell it to him, but then give my dad a few dollars cash then like if we'd go down and see my mother when she was down in Seattle. She was sick, and then she stayed down there for a while and with my grandmother and down that way, and went to a sanitarium for about a month, I think it was, or 6 weeks or something down there. So that
This
gave
was your mom.
my mother, yeah, and she had colitis,
Okay.
and so, but he'd always liked to help my dad out that way. He'd bring down some cash, and he'd get a cow, and then that was the time that well, Claire, he helped with taking us down in the big Studebaker, the Galbraith car. He'd go down, and if we go down just for the day, well, then he'd go down, drive down.
Wow, down to Seattle.
Down to Seattle.
That must have been quite a journey.
Oh, it was
those
those
days.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That was on my mother's side of the
Oh,
family,
okay.
the
Got
Spencer side.
I see, yeah.
5266 12th Avenue was their address.
Right.
My mother's side of the family, my mother's mother, why she was crippled and had arthritis so bad they had to carry her wherever she went, and they'd carry her and put her in a chair and wait on her. They had to wait on her all the time, and then we'd had to carry her. Then men folks would carry her from the car. They'd park the car out in front of the house and carry her into the house and put her on a chair. And so then when I got old enough, then I could help do that. And I thought I was pretty big stuff then.
Yeah.
I could help carry my grandma.
Yeah. I bet she loved that.
I thought that was something. When I didn't do that very many times because she passed on then about that time when I got old enough to help on it. So.
It's nice that you have memories of her, though.
Oh yeah.
That's
Yeah. Oh yeah. She was always a real nice woman. I know her oldest son, Rhodes Spencer. Why he was kind of concerned about her health. I mean, I think he kind of blamed God for it in a sense that she was crippled like that. I think he kind of questioned that. I mean,
just to focus on Henrietta for a minute, we know she was blind.
Yeah.
Was she blind?
I think later on, but
Yeah.
but she was practically blind. I think all the time I knew her.
That there was an Indian camp, maybe at Henrietta's property along the river during the salmon runs.
Oh yeah, it could have been. I don't know about that particularly, about any particular camp. Only the ones we knew were the ones that lived down by Deming. The Indians came up from Deming, and my dad and we'd gone down the river, and we speared a couple of salmon, and in a log jam, I helped him get them, and we had them up on the bank, and this fella and three of them in the party, the Coopers were their names, and they came down the river on a canoe, and so my dad asked them if they had to catch a salmon yet. No, not a salmon. And so my dad says, well, do you want one? And so we got a small one and a big one. Which one do you want? Oh, I want the big one. And I got a kick on that. Of course, my dad figured that was the one he's going to give him anyway, but he's going to have some fun with him. And so, oh, we want the big one. And he said later, my dad talked to him, and that's the only salmon they got when the current going from Saxon down the river below Acme. How far down they went, I don't know, but fishing for salmon. And he told my dad that was the only salmon they had, was the one that we gave him. But every once in a while, my dad and I would get a salmon and take it up to the house, and mother would cook it and can it too, or eat some of it fresh, and then can. So
I remember that Dad used to tell stories about when he was pretty little, I think grade school into junior high, and Dad always called it the Indian camp.
oh,
That was just what Dad called it.
Oh, yeah.
And it was along the river here,
oh,
just right across the way
oh yeah,
from around the end of our field.
oh yeah,
And he said that in the summertime, when the salmon were running, that the Indians would, the Nooksack Indians would camp along there during the salmon run, and they'd set up all the drying racks.
Yeah.
And then they'd dry the salmon.
Oh, yeah.
So they'd have Dad would talk about them cutting the green saplings along the riverbank to make the smoky fires to
Oh,
smoke
yeah.
the salmon
sure,
along and that Dad remembered playing with the kids
oh yeah,
in the
Uh-huh.
tribe because
Oh,
they
yeah.
camped there.
oh yeah.
So
Yeah, well, I know one
You
time they told about my dad was out with somebody, and I think he was the one that he told it. Anyway, he said they were waiting for some salmon, and he said, oh, pretty soon they'd be coming down because somebody had put a stick of dynamite up there in the hole where there are a lot of salmon. And so he said, pretty soon the salmon are going to come down. And I guess they did.
We've got a picture of an ice flow on the river, and I'm not sure if we know who. It might be earlier than your time.
I know one time they said that the river about froze over and there was lots of ice in the river, but I don't remember. I was pretty small then. I know they told about it, that a lot of the water was frozen and the river was pretty well frozen.
Yeah.
Well, this was when Dad was, I think, like high school age or early 20s.
Uh-huh.
So this was in the 30s. It might have been during the Depression, because the glacier. Well, all of a sudden, right here in Acme, they started seeing the ice come down.
Oh yeah.
And Dad and Uncle Joe and someone else, I think Norman Mailing.
Oh yeah.
Dad said every time that they'd go hiking, they'd throw on a backpack with matches and bacon and potatoes.
Oh yeah.
And they threw on their backpacks with their provisions, and they hiked up the river on the ice flow, and
Oh, yeah.
they got all the way up
Wow.
to the glacier.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It was the glacier
Oh,
that
yeah.
was breaking off
Mm-hmm.
and coming down the
Oh, yeah.
South Fork,
Mm-hmm.
which none of them had ever seen before
Yeah.
and haven't seen since.
So Rhodes, when you were in high school, did you work also?
Well, I helped with the farm work in the evenings.
Okay.
My dad didn't make me help him in the morning. I'd get ready and go to school, but
Yeah.
in the evenings I'd come home, well then he liked to have me around to help him in the evenings.
Yeah. What would you do?
Well, I don't remember too much about that. Probably rake hay down for the cows and things like that from in the barn.
Up with the
Yeah,
animals?
I know one time he put the hay fork, stuck it in the hay in front of the cows, and he wanted me to get the fork for him. And I went to get hold of it, and I couldn't get it. What happened was that the hay settled down, and it held the fork on the, so I couldn't pull it out. And so he thought, well, I don't know, didn't weigh very well. But anyway, somebody said, they just laughed at him because he could hardly get it out himself. I remember that.
Yeah. Yeah. So how did you get to school? How did you get to Jimmy?
Well, I had to walk about 3/4 of a mile to catch the bus
So they had
to go to high school. And we'd go through Aunt Sally's place and catch the bus just down to the foot of the hill below where the schoolhouse was on that road down
Okay.
below there. We'd catch they'd wait for us there, stop for us there and pick us up.
Is your picture going to be in the hall at Mount Baker High School? You know, they have all those class pictures.
Yeah.
We should.
Yeah,
We
well,
should go look
my
and
girlfriend's
find one.
picture's in there.
Oh.
Yeah, and
Uh-huh.
I didn't know. Anyway, my buddy and fellow I ran around with in high school, we were together a lot. And sometimes the professor, Olmsted, would call me Keith, and he'd get us mixed up. And,
Oh.
and we were together so much that to start with, he finally figured out who we were. And then it happened when my buddy was going with this girl. I didn't know that he was, but he was friendly with her, and so we were in the bus, and so he was interested in a cousin of hers, and that he was more interested. And so then I started going with her then, and for junior and senior year. But I wasn't very good to her, I guess, in a way. But anyway, I wasn't serious about going with anybody.
Yeah.
I didn't want to settle down, but she had different ideas, I guess. But anyway, about 2 years after that, I saw her down in Seattle, and she asked me then. She said, asked me if I could come back to her, come back and be her friend again. But I told her I don't know whether I even told her anything, but it was. I felt bad about it, but at the same time, I wanted to see the world first.
Yeah.
What was outside. I wasn't interested in settling down.
And you did, yeah.
And that's what I did.
Yeah.
I got to see quite a lot of the world, really, in the World War II, going overseas to land over there in Scotland when we went from New York in the Queen Mary over to Scotland. And we were about 5 days or so going across the Atlantic.
Oh my gosh.
And then somewhere out, about 2 days out or so, I heard a boom, and I don't know whether it was whether it was a submarine that they left a depth charge for that was following us, or if it was one of them that had shot at the boat. But anyway, they didn't hit it, and we got over there and woke up in the morning, and it was just like being out here in Puget Sound. Nice slope, and green and everything, because we had the curtains down all the time. We couldn't see out of the boat, no matter where we were. And I think they made a big loop across the Atlantic and around and up to Scotland to keep away from the German submarines.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
Smart move. So you were in the Army or the Navy?
The Army.
The Army.
Yeah.
So what did you do in Scotland?
Nothing, hardly. They kept us behind the lines in case there was another Battle of the Bulge. That was what we were there for, in case they needed us.
Yeah.
And they'd reserve places out in the country, houses for us to stay in. And every 3 or 4 days they'd move us on up from, we were down there by Holland, tip of Holland, and then went east to Hanover that way.
Oh, wow.
And then we just 3 or 4 days, then we'd move on up closer. And when we landed there, in Scotland, why, some of the fellows, they couldn't wait to get going. And I said, I'm satisfied to stay right here till that last shot is fired over there in Germany. I'm not in. And in fact, I was about the last one to get off the ship, I guess, about the last 3 or 4 of us to get off, to go down through England, and then from Southampton over to Le Havre, France, and then from there we went by Army truck and stuff on up through Belgium and up in the tip of
So
Holland.
you saw a lot of the world.
I got to see quite a lot of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, did you know Iva then? Were you in communication with her? Did you get married after?
After we got back.
Yeah.
She stayed at our house, and she and Jean, my sister, taught Vacation Bible School, and that's where I met her. But we never went with her till after I got out of the service.
And where did you go to church out here?
Well, we had church, Sunday school up at Saxon,
Okay.
and Mr. Knauts was the American Sunday School Union fellow that started to get it going, and had it up there. And then with Iva, why, she and her folks were going to the First Baptist Church in Cedar Woolley. And so then we went down with them down there, and we were down there, I don't know, about went there for 2 or 3 years, and then we had a little difference in the group there, and so pastor suggested start another church.
Oh.
And so that's what we did. We the next Sunday, there were about 100 of us met down in Burlington, and we started the Faith Baptist Church.
I see.
And that's what's going now, and it's been going ever since.
So you guys just got in your cars and drove all over the place
Yeah, we were.
from your Army service and got married. Then what did you do?
Ran bulldozer for Roy Johnson down here. He had a bulldozer. And then my dad and I bought a little D4, kind of a junker, and then I ran that somewhere there around the valley, and working for people with that a little bit. But I ran bulldozer for Roy. And Uncle Hugh, when I got out of the service and I saw him in Bellingham, he told me that you can come to work tomorrow if you want to. And but I was running yarder then, pulling the logs into the spartry, and so. But I wanted to run bulldozer, and so then Roy, I started working with him, and he, a neighbor, had this little D4 cat, and over there by Uncle Joe's place up here along the river, and so I heard it running over there, and he got Roy to run it down off the hill. This fellow had left it up there on the ridge, and he had to run it down the side hill down to the bottom. So Uncle Joe was kind of afraid that this other fellow might tip it over or something. So he got Roy to bring it down to the bottom. And I went over there and rode with him down there when he made the road down. And he told me, he said, "You better buy this cat." And so my dad and I did eventually for this fellow. And my dad traded him a bunch of cows for it. And so then I kind of caught on how to handle one of those machines. Well, evidently these two fellows had stopped up at Saxon. They had a railroad station at the Saxon Spur where Brodell Donovan's eventually had the railroad go in, and evidently they had an order, maybe shoes or something that shipped in there, and somebody stole it. And they figured these two fellows came by and stole whatever the package was there. And they were down here in a shingle shed out here west of town, out toward where Boyd's shingle mill was later, out in that direction somewhere. But I was told that he got somebody to back him up, but I guess they started waving the gun around, so then these fellows started shooting.
And Audley was the sheriff at the time.
Yeah, he
right?
was kind of a sheriff.
Yeah.
That's how come how they got word to him. I often wondered if they had a telephone line from Bellingham out here to ask him to do that. That's what I often wondered, because they seemed to get word out to him because he was the deputy out here.
Right.
And how come they had him do it?
Yeah.
But he just he didn't have the right kind of backup for. If he'd had a couple other fellows that were, with rifles, and then they would have taken care of them if they had started shooting. But as it happened, why they didn't. That's what I was told.
Yeah.
Now I don't know how. I don't know how.
Well, it was a tragedy for the whole community.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.